B6 risotto. We're going to do this alongside the pasta assessment. What we're doing is a fairly straightforward plain risotto, but we're going to do a couple of finishes with it. For the actual assessment, you only have to make the risotto, and if you're just going for a past type grade, you can just make me the risotto. Obviously you can put finishes on it. But I'm going to start by showing you just a couple of ideas for the finish, and then we're going to move on. I'll put the timer on and show you it can all be done in 45 minutes. So first of all, we're going to do a couple of Parmesan crisps. Just push the Parmesan down into a ring mould, and we're going to bake that in an oven at about 150 degrees, not too hot. Okay. You pop that in for me, please? And set the timer to 9 minutes. Pangrattato. Okay, and this is a breadcrumb that we do that flavours the top of the risotto and gives some texture back to it. So the first thing we do is get our pan hot, and what we've got ingredients wise here, I've got some stale bread that I've just torn up. I haven't crumbed it in a machine. I want pieces of the bread. I've got a couple of cloves of garlic, which I'm just going to smash down. And if you could pass me a couple of sprigs of thyme off the back. So just literally, we're going to get our oil hot in the pan, that it doesn't spit when you put the thyme in. So a couple of bits of thyme, a couple of sprigs of thyme into there. And what we're doing is just flavouring the oil. This is going to be removed before we put the breadcrumb in there, but it's just giving a nice flavour. Sometimes I also do this with a touch of chilli in there as well, so thyme, garlic, chilli, or just garlic and chilli, and that gives you risotto a nice spicy kick. Just remove those bits. And then into that infused oil now, we're going to add our breadcrumbs, which were in pieces. We're going to add a touch of seasoning. We want this to be quite highly seasoned because there's just a little bit of it on the top of the dish, yeah? So if you're not having a lot of it, we want those breadcrumbs just getting crispy, and then we're going to add a little bit of ground dried wild mushroom to that. Just a powder that we've made down in a little spice grinder or in a pestle and mortar. If we put it in too early, it will burn in the pan. So we just put it in at the end, and it just gives a nice flavour. It does need cooking out slightly. It just gives us a little wild mushroom note to the risotto. So I'm feeling there that bread's beginning to dry out now. They're lightly golden. So I'm going to add to that now. Generous teaspoon. Plenty. You can smell the mushrooms. We're just going to bring that away from the heat now. And I'm just going to drain that off. And then put onto some absorbent paper. And that will go on the top of our risotto later. So we've got 75 grams of butter, and we've split that into two. We've got 40 grams here to start in the cooking process. So 40 grams into the pan. We're just going to melt that down. And then we've got here one small onion finely chopped. We've got the remaining 35 grams of butter, which we will finish the risotto with. I've got some dry vermouth in there. I've got some stock. We're using the chicken stock today, but you could use a vegetable stock for this risotto equally. And we've also got 200 grams here our Boreo rice, which is a short grain rice. I don't know if you're familiar with it, everyone, the grain type. Other rices that we could use for a risotto would include Cannaroli and Viallo Nano. Cannaroli tends to be a larger grain than our Boreo, and Viallo Nano is particularly good for seafood risottos. Makes it so butter's melted, risotto. And now we're going to put our onion into that pan, and we're going to soften that down. But I want it to cook without any colour. I'm just softening that off. If you wanted to at this stage, you could add some finely chopped thyme leaves. I've just got that starting. And start with a little bit of seasoning. Base. I've got 36 minutes left of my 45. Got a couple of things on the go here. First of all, I've got my onions that have softened down without any colour, and what we're going to do with those now is add our dry vermouth to those, and we're going to allow that to reduce, okay? So in with the dry vermouth, and that's just going to reduce down. And while that's happening, I just want to take my Parmesan crisps, Parmesan twirls, and bend them over a rolling pin. They have to be set in the centre. This will just give us an optional finish on our dish. As I say, if you cook it too far, they turn bitter. So you just want them lightly golden like those. Once they're set on that rolling pin, you can take them at this point now. You can lift that one off, and it keeps that nice curled shape, like so, that we're going to stand up on the risotto at the end. I think most of you have seen those. On with our risotto. So we've got our dry vermouth in here, and what we need to remember with risotto rice is it takes a lot of liquid to the quantity of rice. So in our recipe we've got 200 grams. We need 4 portions today. As we are reducing down the vermouth. Dry vermouth is going to give it a lovely flavour. You could use white wine in there as well, but I just particularly like the dry vermouth in a risotto. So as soon as that's come down, I'm going to put in my rice. This is our Boreo rice, and I'm then going to cook that, stirring all the time. We don't wash rice for risotto. We want the starch from the grain, and we want that, and that's what develops our creaminess in the risotto. So you can see there, I've reduced that down. It's buttery and winey, and at that point now I'm going to add in my risotto rice to that. 200 grams of rice, and I'm going to stir that in and make sure that all that rice is coated in that lovely buttery vermouthy liquid, onion liquid. Now, here's the key moment with the risotto. It's dry now, and what we want to do is each time it's dry, is add a ladle of stock. So your recipe I think says 600 grams, but 600 ml of stock. I always find it takes a little more than that, because as our stock's on there, which must be boiling, it will be reducing the whole time. So what we need to do with this is make sure it's bubbling all the time, and we're working it and developing this starch from the rice. That's going to give us this lovely creamy smooth risotto at the end. So we're working this now. Each time it dries up, we add another ladle of stock. But what I don't want to see anybody doing is flooding their stock in there. It's just a little work it, dry it, and then with this Boreo grain, I find that it's worth checking after 16 because it's a shorter, smaller grain than the Cannaroli. So we want, in the end product, we want the risotto to have a little bit of bite still in the rice, a little bit al dente in the centre. What we don't want is it chalky and hard, yeah? I want just a little bit of texture, a little bit of bite. The other thing is, with our end consistency of our risotto, for me, it should be like lava and it should be oozing. And I think when you go to a very good Italian restaurant and they serve you a risotto, a good waiter will actually tilt the bowl slightly to show you that that's still slightly runny, not quite. That's 16 minutes, and after 16 minutes, I just want to see what my rice grain is like. Still a little firm, but it is going to stand for a few minutes. I'll add a little more stock, work it in, and I'm going to remove that from the heat. What you've got to remember is, obviously, as it stands, the grain will continue to cook. And now what I've got, consistency-wise, is quite soft. Yeah, but it will firm up slightly on the addition of the cheese and the butter. So grind a black pepper. I'm not going to add salt because I've got a little bit of salted butter there, and also my Parmesan cheese, 2 tablespoons worth, is also quite salty. And I'm going to beat this in off the heat to the risotto. I'll allow that to stand now for a few minutes. You must beat all that butter, Parmesan into the mixture. Let's put the mounted cap. You can see their consistency, yeah? Oozing, lava-like. I'll have a little taste of seasoning now. I'm happy. That has plenty. Again, remember you're eating a whole portion of it. So lid on there, and that's just going to stand for a second. I've also got here a little bit of Parmesan shavings that you could use as a finish on something, and all I've done with that is peel from the block of the Parmesan with a speed peeler, and you can always use those as a finish. So, my risotto firmed up slightly. I would say that's oozing like lava. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So, I've got to make sure I have enough for 4 portions, because if it states 4 portions, we must have 4 portions. So if we serve 2, you'll only be serving 1. I will probably ask to see your pan to make sure there is sufficient left. Would you agree that's plenty for a starter? And there's still plenty in the 5 portions in reality. Okay. Can you see the consistency here in terms of the ooziness of it? Yeah, it is just about holding up, isn't it? But it's not falling right over. So I'm going to do one of these with a little bit of this wild mushroom crumb. This is my wild mushroom pangrattato. A little bit on there, and that's just going to give wonderful texture to the risotto. And with that, I like a little bit of chopped parsley just to finish that. And we'll finish that one with a little Parmesan crisp. I'm going to do just a couple of Parmesan shavings, and then a little sprig of chervil on the top of that, and maybe got time as well, just a little grind of black pepper around. So there we are, that's your risotto dish, 2 ways. Still got a drip on the edge of the plate. Assess please.